What can the everyday person that's interested in the blockchain and Web3, where can they go to learn about Web3 that's not just speculating on tokens?
Yeah, good question. I'm very much in the Ethereum camp. I spent a lot of time in that ecosystem as one of the sort of dominant sort of infrastructures of building stuff. Because in my world, the blockchain is an infrastructure to build stuff. That could be anything. As you say, there's a big proportion of the other people involved who are in there to just buy a token and hope it goes up in value. That the sort of gambling speculation world, which is unfortunately it's sort of quite dominant. But yeah, as far as resources, it really depends what you want to do. Yeah, if you want to build, there's tons of resources. Learn about smart contracts, learn about DeFi as well, decentralized finance, the different algorithms, and get involved in some of the projects.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Ways to Wealth. Today I'm joined by Mark Pascall. Mark, why don't you give us the TLDR on who you are and what you're working on?
Thanks, Charlie. Yes, my name is Mark. I'm an ex-Englishman, been here second half of my life, and I'm a technologist by trade and a bit of a futurist, and been heavily involved in the world of Web3 and blockchain for the last 10 years. And I am the co-founder of a project called the Wellbeing Protocol. So we're looking to use new technology, specifically Web3 technology, to reimagine our sort of philanthropic and funding systems to be a bit more equitable, a bit more, fair.
Cool, awesome. Nice. And so you spent the second half of your life in New Zealand. What prompted the move, I guess, originally?
Interesting story. I was in my 20s. After I graduated in the UK, I was really into windsurfing. I qualified as a windsurfing instructor, and me and my mate, we thought we'd hunt out windy places, and we heard about this little town called Wellington, which was windy all the time. So we turned up here, and kind of fell into a proper job, and kind of never left. Essentially, that's the short story.
Right. Wow, that's cool. And then when was you said 10 years in Web3 and the kind of blockchain space. What prompted that?
I started my career as a software developer, and ended up running I started my own software company quite early on, but we kind of specialized in new leading edge technologies. And part of my role at that company was to sort of uncover those new technologies and explore whether we want to get into them as a team. So, and I was invited to this conference in Queenstown. This is in 2015, I think, 16, called Bitcoin South. And went down there with no idea what the hell Bitcoin was or anything like that. And kind of got sucked in. It's a bit of a rabbit hole, and came away kind of on day 3. The penny dropped for me. This was much more than a currency or a new technology. There's actually could fundamentally affect how we organize ourselves as a society and how the world works. So so kind of came back to Wellington and sort of essentially decided that week that we were going to pivot the company and to turn into a blockchain company versus a traditional software company. So
Right. And is that the same company that's running today, or?
no, so we started out called my original company was 3months.com, and then then we transitioned into Blockchain Labs. This is in 2016, and then I sold that company 2019, I think, and then so I'm now and then started up this new project, the Wellbeing Protocol.
Yeah, right. And what led you to sell the other company? Labs.
It was a bit of a sort of a career midlife crisis. I'd been Blockchain Labs and a previous company that we were services businesses building stuff for anybody who would pay us to build stuff, and kind of got to a point my kids were sort of growing up and sort of thinking about what they were going to do, and kind of realized that I wanted a bit more from my life. I was trying to do some good in the world, and basically I had the opportunity to step away from the company and to rethink about what I want to do the next sort of decade or two. and concluded that I wanted to do something with some real social good, and so then started on this new path.
Hmm. And is there a few different components, or is the whole thing a DAO?
So I don't know how au fait your listeners are with Web3 and DAOs, but essentially, so Web3 and crypto and blockchain, they're all often used interchangeably. And DAO stands for Decentralized Autonomous Organization, which is this kind of concept of you can use Web3 and these things called smart contracts and to actually build new governance systems, new organizational structures on the blockchain, and they're sort of global by nature. They're incorruptible theoretically, and we've got this new sort of greenfield space to explore how to govern and how to run businesses. So that was a big part of where I got sucked into, exploring that DAO space within Web3. And so the Wellbeing Protocol, it's a social good. We're essentially a social enterprise building infrastructure for social good. But we want to become a DAO. There's still quite a lot of friction between the sort of the Web3 world and the traditional, world of laws and regulations and currencies and stuff. So you have to be quite careful and quite pragmatic around what you can do now versus what you will be able to do in the future.
Right, understood. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, it's kind of that whole game of trying to innovate while conforming to the norms that allow you to operate.
I mean, our traditional financial and legal system is built around, for lots of good reasons, around certain constructs. And whenever and blockchain Web3 is by definition disruptive, because our entire system of finance and capitalism is built on this idea of centralized companies, so companies controlling things. And whereas blockchain is saying, okay, well, let's build this new infrastructure that's decentralized, that has nobody that you can put in jail if they do wrong, and nobody you can sue. And so it kind of challenges our entire legal regulatory system, which is both exciting and scary at the same time.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's totally right. So how did you get it started? How did you kickstart it? How did it all come about? How were you able to get some like momentum and kind of spin it up, I guess? And like, what's the current regime around that?
Yeah, so the Wellbeing Protocol, we essentially emerged 4 or 5 years ago, and it was just me with an idea to do some social good in the Web3 space. So it's kind of a bit like a hammer looking for a nail at that point. Got together with a few people. One of our previous Prime Minister's, Bill English's advisors on social welfare reform, and another lady, Diane Robinson, who was the ex-head of the Auckland City Mission. And we kind of got together and just sort of spent 3 days in workshops brainstorming ideas around how about the current system of philanthropy and social welfare, how it might be disrupted with a more decentralized lens, and bringing in lots of other new thinking. And so out of those workshops emerged the sort of the seed of an idea, and then I kind of ran with it. And and that's really that's been my focus over the last few years.
Interesting. That's cool. Is there any kind of I mean, how do you actually go from idea to implementation, or how long has it taken you to kind of, I guess, find a nail?
Yeah. So we were. It was hard at first, and we went down a couple of sort of avenues that didn't work out. We landed about 3 years ago. We struck it lucky. We refocused our messaging on the community grant system, quite a specific area, the system that the governments, our governments and every government uses to distribute money to local community groups.
Right.
The current system is quite bureaucratic, it's quite inefficient, and essentially involves community groups sort of begging for money through the grant system. They have to apply, they have to know who to apply to and what to say, and so they can waste all the time. So we looked at that system and pitched this new alternative way to a bunch of funders in Wellington, in central government, and said, hey, imagine if you could actually the community, a small community group, could actually share the good that they're doing, and share how they would spend money if they got it, and then you could stream money into their treasury, but they would decide how to spend it in the form of micro grants, spitting out of the community. So we pitched this idea to a lady actually in Sport, New Zealand, and and she loved the concept, and essentially allowed us to also connect us with a Maori men's health group, who were again quite typical of a local community group wanting to do good and improve their health. And and we got funding from 3 or 4 different sources, government agencies, private investors, to build the technology and to run trials. Since then it's gone strength to strength, and now we're running trials all around the world. And
Okay, so you're doing global trials.
So we've got trials across UK, Australia, and New Zealand currently.
Right, yeah, that's right. I read that. Okay, so it's still regional in a sense where you're picking a market.
Well, and the software works anywhere, but the solution relies on sort of trust and relationships, and working with community development organizations, charities, and funders. And so there's much more to it than just the software. The software is kind of a key component, but building those relationships and training up charities, and so that's kind of a longer play. And so we've got various partners around the world now who are basically representing us.
Cool. And is there an issue or a challenge around funding flows and all of that stuff if you're working in multiple organizations, or you're not in the flows of capital, or are you?
Well, we're the current, so ultimately the system will be run on Web3, stay on the trading knees. Yeah, they will. Okay. Yes. So, but the reality is now there's too much friction between the blockchain world and the fiat banking system, as I mentioned before. So we've built it on chain so that the software is running using our own native token, but that token represents money that actually sits in a nice, safe bank account controlled by the funder or the partner. So we're kind of more like an accounting system that allows the funder, partner, community group to have that transparency and sort of hard code the rules around the funding flow. So so we kind of we're in that intermediary space at the moment.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. Easy. Yeah. Interesting. Do you go with blockchain second then with your pitch?
Yeah. We learned quite early on that in the markets that we're at, philanthropy and government agencies, blockchain is almost a dirty word. So and there's a lot of just education needed, and often there isn't the opportunity to give that education. So nowadays we sort of de-emphasize Web3 blockchain and just talk about the value add. And that's been much more useful.
Yeah, cool. Interesting. Yeah, definitely is obviously a company that deals in blockchain and crypto. We know the hurdles that you have to go through to operate in a acceptable manner. And in our case, it took us a very long time to get going because it took us 9 months originally to open a bank account. So yeah, understood. Yeah, okay, cool. Why a couple or regions? Did you have personal connections there? Like, what was the rationale behind kind of having multiple regions from day one?
Yeah, it was more through connections. I mean, obviously, I'm based in Wellington, and the team was down here. So we looked, and we got funding from a government agency down here, and so we looked at sort of running trials down here initially. That's much easier because we could physically get to them. But then we had other people interested, like Tasman District Council and other places up in Auckland. But then, so I've obviously from the UK, and I was going back there anyway for family reasons. So I kind of discovered in London that was actually quite obviously the market's much bigger, and there's actually a much more well-developed participatory grant-making ecosystem out there. That there are companies that specialize in helping communities decide how to spend money. And so when we sort of got in front of them, they were super excited. And and then Australia, that was we were actually discovered by a foundation over there who connected us with Regen Melbourne, and then they're doing awesome stuff. So they're spinning up 7 or 8 trials at the moment.
Right. Oh, that's cool. And what blockchain network do you guys run on?
So we're on Ethereum, a layer 2 called Base.
Yeah, Base.
But we could switch to any EVM compatible network.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Cool. Were you done with the capitalistic kind of style? Like, what was the kind of
Yeah. The sort of the kind of the awakening I had a few years ago was I've spent most of my career sort of chasing, the capitalist goals, more money, bigger house, all that sort of traditional financial capital that we're all taught to chase within the system. But it was kind of that realization that there are actually all these other forms of capital, social, intellectual, experiential, cultural, computational. Yeah, there's all other forms of capital that actually are better for us, and there's lots of evidence that says above a certain level of money in your bank, it doesn't actually make you happier, and so it's really building up those other forms of capital that was the switch. Okay, I realised that that's the important stuff. That's going to be good for my mental, physical health. So yeah, that was the kind of and the capitalist system. It is, in all its wonderfulness and the things it's done in the world. It's one of its side effects is that it tends to kill communities. Just by definition, it tries to centralize. It tries to become more efficient. Economy of scale, centralization. So it's better to have one big company than 3 small companies. Generally, it's more efficient. So yeah, the result is that our communities have just been stripped away of their power or of their autonomy, and that's quite different from even a few generations ago. So and that especially affects the marginalised, the vulnerable in our society. So so we've tried to build the Wellbeing Protocol, build our own business around sort of almost anti-capitalist values, and more like cooperative, more like a with the sort of the DAO principles sort of starting to bake in. So yeah, that's very much, and that's ultimately we want to decentralize our governance out to the communities that we're serving. So we've got no profit motivation. We want to create a sustainable business model, and we want to grow, but it's not about making the people who get in early rich in monetary terms. They'll be rich in other terms. So it's quite a different way of thinking.
Yeah, cool. And like, I guess, what would do you have like a vision for success if you were to wake up 5 years from now, tomorrow? Like, do you have in your idea like what that looks like in the business or in the cooperative or the DAO? Like, what would like success look like?
I think success for us would be, an alternative economic system that everybody in the world had heard of, and with that inherently supported human well-being, and the incentives built into that economic system supported well-being. But that's probably more than 5 years. That may be a bit longer, but in the sort of perhaps 3 to 5 years, it's just really rolling this out across the globe. I mean, the software can work anywhere. We built it in a trustless, system on smart contracts. So we want to build on that narrative and just really have, have it rolled out in every country in the world. And just millions of hyper-local communities using it. It's kind of this two-sided marketplace with lots of hyper-local groups doing good on one side of the marketplace, and then people with financial capital, funders, philanthropists, or just mum and dad with an extra $100 to be able to put money in and get that direct connection and see transparent data flow. And that's the kind of the sort of 3 to 4 year vision.
Does it have baked in like kind of almost like use of funds? Is that you know, and the cost of getting it to the organization that it's desired for? Is there any intent?
Yeah. I mean, we created a system there. A funder can literally log into a dashboard, put some money through the system, watch it flow through, and it's 100, and right down to the receipt. At the other end, the community member who gets the receipt to buy the spades for the community garden.
And does that end up on the blockchain?
Yes, it's
the receipts.
Yes, the moment we haven't put receipts actually on the blockchain, but we could easily do that. But the amount that was spent to the $150 for the state.
So there's like a transaction list that ends up on the blockchain.
Yeah. So that it can be independently verified by anybody in the world that transaction happened, and so you, in theory, you create this trust system that funders and community members and the charities can all rely on to hold the source of truth, and we can make it super efficient. No bank fees and all the rest of it, and full transparency. So yeah.
Mm. So you do see what sort of percentage would you predict of in 5 years, let's say, or 3 to 5, would be using actually wallets and stables as a source of receiving the funds, for example?
Yeah, it's really difficult to predict. I mean, I think that it's changing quite quickly, and especially all the action going on in the US around stable coins. It's really hard to know how quickly that'll flow down to places like New Zealand and Europe's reasonably far behind on the stable coin front. So yeah, because basically for us to switch to a stable coin in, say, New Zealand, we need a trusted stable coin, pegged to a New Zealand dollar. And
so you would want a New Zealand dollar pegged stable?
Yeah, ideally, because real people in communities, they want to see the cost of that thing in New Zealand dollars, and as soon as
so if they're wherever they're kind of focused, residing, situated, they would probably want, unless they were really an emerging country, right? Because that's obviously one of the big benefits to stables, is that if you're in a country where your currency is getting aggressively devalued against the US dollar, that's kind of a massive problem. Think Turkey, right? Uganda, different countries like that. So, okay, that makes sense. So you would just want stables, and then you would want ways for people to basically receive them and then spend them. And that, in New Zealand, that's hard to say whether we'll be doing anything of relevance in stable coins in 5 years. It depends, I guess, it really would depend very heavily on Australian bank influence on that whole regime in many ways, would be my prediction.
And ideally, we give the communities, the partners, the option. Do you want to use US stablecoin or your local stablecoin or some other fiat option? So with pros and cons of each. But yeah, you're right. For developing countries which have less stable local fiat currencies, this is a huge opportunity as well, which is already starting to happen. They use stablecoin much more now.
That's cool. And did you find that have you found a natural niche of where you get really quick buy-in in your sales cycle when you're getting people to take trials? Like, I noticed you said some stuff about sports. So is there any sort of specific niche that you guys have found where there's like more propensity to adopt?
Yeah, I mean, our focus has been on more marginalised, disadvantaged communities because, and one of the reasons, aside from sort of moral reasons, one of the reasons is there's simply more money from philanthropy and from government to support those marginalised communities. So it's an easier sell to funders. Like, hey, look, we've got 15 of these communities that you're trying to fund anyway. We're finding it really expensive to fund. We can, log into this system, and you can, with 2 clicks, you can start streaming money directly into these marginalized communities. We can filter by geography or theme, whether it's sort of health or environmentalism or whatever. And yeah, so So, but having said that, your question was what's been easiest. That hasn't been easiest. Hardest ones aren't the easiest. But we found relatively easy to talk to sort of gardening groups and more capable groups who just go, oh yeah, we can just start using this, or even school boards in a PTA committees. So we're kind of trying to balance giving access to those sorts of groups who you could argue don't really need as much as some of the more marginalized groups in the world. But yeah, progress can move slowly with communities, and yeah, so it's kind of just a lot of hard work and a lot of traditional community building needed.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I love grassroots activities, and I liked how you talked about how you're operating as a cooperative. That was our, I guess, big kind of push internally, was that we wanted to be a guild, a modern day guild as a financial institution. That, I guess, focused on aligned incentives with customers, which in many financial organizations, especially in the side of the world, the incentives are not necessarily aligned. But the traditional brokerage model, actually, in general, has always been dubious from an alignment perspective with end clients. So yeah, we wanted to knock that on its head, like shift that and throw it on its head, really. And it seems like you're trying to do the same thing. And I think that the more you can disintermediate, and the more you can get resources, capital, different types of capital, directly to source, typically you get better outcomes.
Yeah, and I think what the blockchain and smart contracts do, they allow you to sort of predetermine the rules and ensure they can't be corrupted. Because it's all very well for you guys to say, we're going to do this honest thing, but so in the traditional system. But hey, something changes at your end, and you see
Your policy changes, your customer agreement changes.
yeah, whatever. Yeah, so everybody can trust you. You see, you seem like nice guys, but you can't really trust. You can't really, because things can change outside your control. But with DAOs and smart contracts, you have the possibility to literally hard code it so nobody can change it. And so if you can do that, or at least you can change. Everybody can change it if there's the pre-agreed governance consensus. Just like how Bitcoin can change if everybody agrees, you can change a DAO if everybody agrees. So, but you have that pre-agreed, and so in theory, it can't be corrupted by a rogue CEO or president or whoever in the system.
Have you got any use cases of DAOs done really well? Like, are there any DAOs in particular that you think about that exist in the world today that are doing a really great job and actually running kind of this new way of governance in action? Like, are there any top of mind for you?
Yeah, it depends on your definition of a DAO, because many people would regard Bitcoin as the original DAO. It's a bunch of incentive mechanisms and a very coarse governance system, and it's done fantastically well from one white paper and a bit of code. It's now worth trillions.
Yeah, right.
I was one of the founding partners of one of the early venture capital DAOs called Medcartel.
Yes.
DAOs, and so we're kind of winding down now. But for 4 years, we had at one point, I think, around 100 million in crypto assets, $100 million US dollars equivalent in crypto assets and tokens that we were governing. And that was a really interesting early experiment in venture capital DAOs. And yes, we were all on chain, no office, no CEO, and all decisions were made via smart contracts. So projects like Uniswap is one of the biggest exchanges. That's essentially a DAO, and that's doing fantastically. So there are examples. And what we struggle with a little bit is there aren't really many doing social good,
Right.
and that's really, I think, all that matters in our minds. So we're trying to sort of really educate and make happen that side of the world. That's what.
And what is the Web3 and the blockchain community kind of how they responded to what you guys are trying to do as well? Is there interest from that side? Like, obviously, you're kind of playing two sides. You're playing a very centralized, government orientated, right? Part of your business in terms of communications, deal flow, etc. And then, on the other side, you'll build on this kind of principles of Web3 and the blockchain, and there's this kind of, that is the ultimate, the blockchain community, the Web3 community, the crypto community in general is kind of, probably the largest grassroots movement ever, if you look at it just from sheer kind of dollars perspective and scale. So yeah, has the crypto community or the Web3 and blockchain community kind of cottoned on to what you guys are doing yet, or?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, as you say, I'm traversing those two worlds, and they are quite different worlds. But in many ways, they're trying to that they are. Well, there's a subset of the Web3 world, so the regen blockchain world, who are essentially trying to do this what we're doing, but pretty much all on chain, and they're kind of, in my opinion, missing the opportunity to sort of interact with real people. You need MetaMask wallets, and you need a certain level of privilege and knowledge to be able to partake in those systems. But we're trying to do the same thing. And but we got funding from the Ethereum Foundation, and Mayaguchi, the ex-president, she was in New Zealand, and she personally funded us. And she's talked about us, so we're certainly across the Ethereum Foundation, and I brought Vitalik. This is 2017. I brought Vitalik over to New Zealand, and it's been interesting. So Vitalik is the founder of Ethereum. People don't know. So I hung out with him for a week in Wellington, Auckland, a few years ago. So yeah, so they're across us, and as I said, there's this regen community who are very much across what we're doing.
Yeah, cool. That's really nice. And like, what would you say is holding potentially New Zealand back from benefiting from the emerging blockchain space currently? Like, is there anything holding us back as a regional player? And is there any opportunities for us as a regional player as well?
Yeah, I think there's always opportunities. I mean, it's always an uphill battle bringing the politicians and the policymakers and along with the ride. That the whole democratic system is, based on this 3-year cycle. It's 3 years here, which 3 years here short. Yeah, a very short cycle. So it's and innovation. This sort of innovation is, always perceived to be highly risky. Often it is. And all the bad press that crypto has had over years doesn't help as well. And I mean, just like the internet, I mean, blockchain can be used for bad as well, and it certainly has been. So yeah, we're kind of fighting a bit of an uphill battle there. But I've presented to 2 select committee meetings at Parliament, and tried over the years as hard as I can to educate the politicians. And so that we could potentially change regulations to make it more crypto friendly, and to incentivize some of the team members to come to New Zealand and create more projects from here. But
Right.
yeah, and most of the action is sort of happening in the US at the moment, which is
Right. Most blockchain action is happening in the US,
yeah.
which is a complete shift, right? 180-degree spin from what was prior, right, when in the blockchain and the crypto space in general, in the Biden administration.
Yeah. But even then, with the sort of, they call it choke point 1.0, where they really on the face of it tried hard to sort of block crypto innovation. But even then, there was a lot going on over there. And just because there's so much money and the whole Silicon Valley thing, tech innovation, even then there was a lot going on. But since Trump came in and sort of turned that or changed all that narrative, it's gone to gangbusters.
Yeah, for sure.
So some of the corruption with it.
Yeah, it's a massive grift. It might be the biggest grift in history.
Yeah.
In some ways, right? And there's obviously this huge confrontation that's kind of behind closed doors, but seeps out every now and again between the central banking system and the blockchain, the crypto ecosystem, and the Bitcoin as well, broadly. And there's a pretty rational path you can get to where it's actually potentially even the Fed is just creating its own dollars rather than using the banking system. Because obviously the banking system currently creates most of the dollars in circulation, whereas, there is a regime where stable coins exist in such a way where perhaps they're being created at source.
Yeah.
Obviously,
Yeah.
changing everything up, that changes everything.
Yeah, I mean, back to your earlier question around the opportunity for New Zealand. I mean, for me, it seems like a no-brainer for us to create a government-supported stablecoin as an alternative, to the US-pegged dollar, because they're busy printing, busy printing money over there. If we can print less, perhaps our currency will do better. So I think there's not. Yeah, I wish they'd consider that, but they will.
Yeah, I mean, currently, it's not. Currently, New Zealand's currency has a number of pretty meaningful headwinds against it, right? Which actually has kind of created a few dynamics where local buying power is becoming harder, and also our relative buying power globally is reducing. Relative wealth is potentially reducing. And also our ability to buy the things that we used to in, the form of subscriptions, gas, etc. A lot of things are obviously still priced in US dollars, right? So it's kind of that whole duality between, how do you protect your buying power? Because ultimately that's what Bitcoin is about protecting your buying power against kind of, I guess, rogue governments that are being fiscally irresponsible. And it's a really interesting dynamic when you are a sub-currency of the reserve currency that is being devalued, right? So you're subservient to the reserve currency, and actually you're weaker in the case of the last 4 or 5 years. But also that currency is being devalued actively. It's quite an interesting dynamic for us to live in. But yeah, I mean, I know there's a few players trying to do local stables. It's kind of, it's quite an interesting one, because there's also a bunch of issues around stables aren't really allowed to, they're not allowed to pay you an interest.
Yeah.
Which is kind of it's interesting, right? Because as a stablecoin provider, you're like, well, I get all the margin. But that's deliberately in place because then banks still have an advantage to keeping capital in there. One thing is for sure, that clearly the velocity of money exchange is not going to slow down.
Yeah. I mean, I got involved in another project years ago called Rye, which was an alternative to DAI. So DAI was an algorithmic stablecoin, or still is. I mean, they rebranded now, but it's an algorithmic stablecoin, because I think, wasn't it? Because it'd be nice to have a global stablecoin that wasn't pegged to any fiat currency. I mean, that's going to be the ultimate goal here. Dream. Yeah, and Rye was purported to be that. They basically wanted to become this stable coin, but it wasn't pegged to any fiat. So it basically sort of followed a sort of a dampening curve. And so, when the crypto market crashed, when Bitcoin and Ether sort of crashed down, it slowly began to crash. So that didn't really take off as far as I know, but it would seem like one would hope.
How are they trying to keep the value secure? How are they trying to keep the value
similar to DAI, and that they basically had an algorithm that and smart contracts that incentivizes people to take out loans or to earn interest. So it's a dynamic system for incentivizing people to back it, essentially.
So right, interesting.
And earn money on earn interest and blah blah. So see, I feel that there's a model out there that we haven't quite cracked yet.
Found yet.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because you just had so many constraints you're dealing with, right, around liquidity, especially. Liquidity is really the issue,
Yeah.
because you need tokens to be able to be exchanged in order to make sure it's all working, and you need a dollar for every token. But I mean, and it gets even more complex when what is the dollar, right? When you have basically a stable that's not pegged to a currency.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. Ultimately, it needs to be sort of somehow aligned with the price of, your apples, your eggs, or your houses. So yeah, so it's an interesting one.
Interesting. And what do you think? What do you think that what can the everyday person that's interested in the blockchain and Web3, where can they go to learn about Web3 that's not just speculating on tokens?
Yeah, good question. I think, I mean, I'm very much in the Ethereum camp. I spend a lot of time in that ecosystem as one of the sort of dominant sort of infrastructures for building stuff. Because yeah, in my world, the blockchain is an infrastructure to build stuff. That could be anything. As you say, there's a big proportion of the other people involved who are in there to just buy a token and hope it goes up in value. That the sort of gambling speculation world, which is unfortunately it's sort of quite dominant. But yeah, as far as resources, I mean, it really depends what you want to do. Yeah, if you want to build, there's tons of resources. Learn about smart contracts. Learn about, I mean, and DeFi as well. Decentralized finance, the different algorithms uh, and get involved in some of the projects. I mean, there's great environmental projects. There's all sorts of communities that are coming together. Unfortunately, it involves spending a lot of time on Discord often, or in Zoom calls, but because these are all distributed teams. But there's a bunch of people, converging on all sorts of different projects in the Web3 world, and because it's such a different paradigm, you really can go to sort of ground zero and start sort of challenging all the assumptions around how things were done before. Uh,
Awesome, wicked. Are there any specific white papers or any specific, like case studies that exist out there that you think that people should read, other than maybe just the Bitcoin white paper?
yeah, I mean, again, the Bitcoin white paper, the Ethereum white paper, some of the, I mean, there's a ton of, I mean, there's so many white papers out there now. It's really more, it's more if you've got a specific passion or area of interest, whether it's environmental or human health uh, or DeFi or whatever. I think hunt out the white papers or the more popular projects in those spaces. Join the Discord, read the white paper or light paper, and just start to get your head around it. But you probably first need to sort of get your head around the basics of decentralization and at a very high level. I mean, I've spent a lot. I've coded for many years, but understanding the basic principles of how a blockchain stores information and how a smart contract works. How a smart contract is immutable. The fact that you can't corrupt it in theory. So those sorts of principles and how different it is from our current centralized, hierarchical system of organizing humanity. So it's understanding the basics, finding an area of interest, and then perhaps zooming in on one or two white papers in cool projects that are aligned with your values.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, it's been awesome hearing about what you're working on. Thank you so much for spending the time, Mark. We really appreciate it. It's always good to explore like new technologies and the way of thinking, also when it's merged with trying to obviously provide kind of direct funding and ability for people to have liquidity in areas where they need capital. So thank you for your service, I guess, in that regard. And yeah, I'd love to hear more when you've got more information around different like trials and case studies that you do. We'd love to hear about it on the pod for sure.
Yeah, and if anyone's interested, hum.community is a kind of our new consumer-facing brand. There's loads of resources on there, so if you want to find out more.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Mark.
Right.
Much appreciated.
Thanks, Charlie. Bye.